The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL. You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast.
What a dominant performance it was by your Los Angeles Rams. They absolutely dominate the Vikings. They took it to them in the first quarter, and that really is my first big takeaway, is this Rams team absolutely flipped the script on their first quarter woes right away. You come out of the gates, and you drive the ball down the field. You took it 70 yards on 7 plays. You scored an opening drive touchdown on a pass, Matthew Stafford to Kyren Williams. And just like that, you're up. And one play that will probably be forgotten was the hard count on 4th down earlier in the drive to get the Vikings to jump. Very next play, Kyren Williams, he gets the touchdown catch. The Rams up 7-0 early. Then you get a defense that just completely was dominant. On the Vikings' first drive, Byron Young, he gets the TFL on the first play, a sack on the second play. It's 3rd and 21, just like that. They end up forcing a punt. Just a great defensive series right out of the gates. This Rams defense was hungry. They're all over the place. You had pressure from your front four. And then on the very next drive, the Rams, they get the ball, and they're moving it. They're moving the ball down the field. And unfortunately, Bo Limmer, he gets caught for a unnecessary roughness penalty after a 9-yard gain. That cost the Rams 15 yards. That made it 2nd and 16. Should have been 2nd and 1. And then, unfortunately, the Rams had to settle for a 34-yard field goal in this one. And you end up going 10-0. And that's another big takeaway is the Rams won all phases of this game. All 3 phases of this game were won by the Rams. The offense scoring 27 points. The defense holding this Vikings offense to just 9 points to 269 total yards. You absolutely dominate them in the first half. You take a 24-3 lead into halftime. That was the largest halftime lead in a playoff game ever in Los Angeles Rams franchise history. And the defense, they continued to show that you're getting better, that you're improving, and that you're really peaking at the right time, because the Vikings get the ball back after the field goal, and you're getting takeaways. Kobe Durant, he intercepts Sam Darnold on the Vikings' 3rd drive. The Rams did not capitalize. They weren't able to score points from it. But on the Vikings' 4th drive, they end up making a big mistake. You have a Jared Verse scoop and score 57 yards for a touchdown. He's doing flips into the end zone. I'm sitting there yelling, hey, please, Jared Verse, don't hurt yourself, my man. But Ahkello Witherspoon, he did a great job foisting that fumble. Jared Verse shows that instinct to pick it up, make something good happen with it, and he gets in the end zone. And just like that, you blink, and the Rams are up 17-3. I'll say it again. This is a Rams team that was 31st in the National Football League this season in first quarter scoring, averaging 1.8 points per first quarter for the season. The Vikings, on the other hand, they were 2nd in the NFL in first quarter scoring. The Rams not only shut them out, they held them to 2 first downs. That's how dominant this defense was. And the Vikings on their 5th drive, they turned it over again after Kobe Turner sacked Sam Darnold on 4th down. You had the conductor conducting, and that gave the ball back to the Rams. A great field possession. They're on the 39-yard line. And with 1:27 left in the first half, you get a touchdown from Davis Allen. Matthew Stafford, he finds Davis Allen for a touchdown. And just like that, the Rams up 24-3 before the half. And that was it. That was the game. Who's going to call Dan Campbell? Who's going to call Dan Campbell and tell him that you're not going to be playing the Vikings in 2 weeks? In fact, if the Rams play like this against an Eagles team that, yeah, they present some problems, they didn't look great, you could be looking at the Rams in 2 weeks, not the Minnesota Vikings, with the performance that they put up. And you could look at some of the causes for concern, that being the lack of spreading the ball around to guys like Cooper Kupp. But still, Cooper Kupp didn't have a catch in the first half. They didn't really go to him offensively. There was that shot of Matthew Stafford talking to Cooper Kupp. And, of course, they're boys, right? They're going to find a way to make some plays together at some point. And then in the second half, in the third quarter, you had a really nice catch, really nice grab, good separation. He had a 29-yard catch, Matthew Stafford to Cooper Kupp on 3rd and 9. That put the Rams on the Vikings 24-yard line, and then they get another field goal thanks to Joshua Carty. So another big kick. He's made 15 straight kicks. So he's really gotten the groove of things after we were talking about maybe the Rams still having some kicker problems. And the Vikings, we're going to score some points. Of course, the Rams defense, they were just trying to make things difficult. If you're going to score, we're going to make you use some clock up. And the Vikings, they didn't score their first touchdown of the game until the 5:05 mark in the third quarter. It was a 26-yard catch by TJ Hawkinson. You had Christian Roseboom defending him. And look, TJ Hawkins is a great player. At that point, you just know that they're going to have some type of production offensively. You have to assume so. The Rams at that point, they're up 27-9. You're still feeling good about that. It's the National Football League. You just have to not turn the ball over, not do anything that is going to hurt yourself, and there's a good chance that you're going to walk away with the victory. And the truth is, they didn't do much in the second half, but you didn't need to because you're up 24-3. They scored just 3 points in the third and fourth quarters combined. But the good thing for the Rams, they didn't need to because the defense played so well. He had 9 sacks for this Rams team. 9 sacks. 6 sacks in the first half. That was the most ever by a team in a playoff game in 25 years. Aaron Donald was in the building. I'm not so sure that number 99 wasn't playing in this one because of how dominant they looked. Because Sam Darnold, I think he was seeing ghosts pretty quickly. The ghost of Aaron Donald, the ghost of Deacon Jones, the ghost of great Rams in the past, because clearly they had him uncomfortable. He was holding on the ball a little too long, and the Rams just weren't getting the job done. 8 of their 9 sacks came with 4-man fronts. So you're getting pressure from your front four. You can keep guys in coverage and guard the weapons they have with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson. And you got to give this Rams team all the credit in the world, considering the week that they had, considering that you always know what happened. And thoughts and prayers to everyone in Southern California that's been impacted by the wildfires. I live in Hollywood. I evacuated. I have friends and family that have lost their houses, everything they've ever had. It's a very sad time, for being completely honest, here in Southern California. But I think this Rams team kind of felt that, and they rallied behind that. They didn't complain. The Vikings were complaining. Oh, we don't. Before, of course, everything happened, the Vikings there. Oh, how does a 14-win team not have a home playoff game and this and that? Vikings, they had a lot of fans there. It felt like a college bowl game in a sense, because there was a good amount of Vikings fans. I mean, the Rams showed up, they showed out, they're making noise all night long, but there was a larger volume of Vikings fans that were there that would have been in SoFi because of relocating. But the Rams, they didn't complain. They went out there and they didn't make excuses. They just took care of business and they got the job done. And it really, really is a testament to the culture of this Rams organization with Sean McVay and everything that they have built as a team and as a group. So it doesn't surprise me at all whatsoever. They were able to go and win this game. It was a terrific game plan by Chris Shula, well executed. Matthew Stafford was sharp once again. My prediction for this game was I had the Rams 27, the Vikings 23. I was right on the Rams scoring 27 points, but the shocker is that you held this Vikings team with all the explosive weapons to single digits. 269 total yards, 163 passing yards, 106 rushing yards, 3.8 yards per play, 6 for 17 on third downs, 1 for 4 on fourth downs, 9 sacks. You forced 3 punts. The Rams had 10 penalties too for 95 yards. That definitely something you want to clean up. but you caused a fumble, you had an interception, and you didn't get beat bad by Justin Jefferson. You held Justin Jefferson to 5 catches for 58 yards. He didn't get in the end zone. Their leading receiver was their tight end. If I had told you that before the game, you'd have felt pretty good about the Rams' chances of winning. Jordan Addison, 3 catches for 29 yards. Jalen Naylor, 3 catches for 33 yards. So it was just a fantastic win for the Los Angeles Rams. I hate to say this about an NFL playoff game, but it felt easy. They were cruising. It felt easy. This is as comfortable of a playoff game win that I've experienced. And that's because of how dominant that first half was. So, yeah, what a win for the Los Angeles Rams. You felt the energy in that building. You saw the team wearing LAFD gear, hats, and shirts. And it was just an incredible performance by the defense. All phases of the game, we needed a Matthew Stafford that was going to be sharp, a Matthew Stafford that looked locked in. And he was 19 for 27, 2 touchdowns. He handled the blitz well. Kyren Williams, 16 carries for 76 yards. On the receiving end, Tyler Higbee actually was the Rams' leading receiver tonight. 5 catches for 58 yards. Behind him was Puka, 5 catches for 44 yards.
Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
Every problem the Vikings had all season long all came home to roost at once.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast.
Today, it's a funeral. It's a eulogy. The Vikings season ends with quite a whimper after 14 bangs. Just 2 absolute disasters. And that's how quickly it can end. I want to approach this show a little bit differently than I would usually do, like a game recap, because I'm going to be honest, I don't really think you guys want to hear about like Jared Verse beat Cam Robinson and blah, blah, blah. It's all a moot point with a lot of players that aren't going to be on the team next year. So instead, I would like to look at this a little bit more broadly and how what happened to the Vikings in this game was a microcosm of everything that has happened to them all year long. The Rams outplayed the heck out of the Vikings, and the Lions outplayed the heck out of the Vikings last week. There was a point made on the broadcast that Joe Buck and Troy Aikman were kind of saying, well, they won 14 games, but look how little that matters, right? Like that doesn't do anything. You got to win in the playoffs, right? Which is true. But I think if that were the case, then then don't watch the regular season. But we do. We show up every week and we watch the regular season. I'm getting DMs from people saying, I'm done for somebody said, I've been a Vikings fan for 40 years, but I think I'm done after this year. No, you aren't. I'll see you Sunday. I'll see you for free agency day for sure. By the time it's March, you've had two months of distance. You'll be back. Some of you are going to be back already. By the way, if you were curious, if you're new to Locked On Vikings goes on throughout the entire offseason, as does the Minnesota Football Party. Basically, everything I do will go on throughout the entire offseason. This is a year-round operation here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So I hope that you will come chill out. But the point I guess I'm making is the regular season is still, at the very least, an instructive thing that tells us stuff about the team and helps the team make decisions about what to move forward with. But I also just want to push back on the idea that anyone wasted their time this year. This year ruled. It was a lot of fun. And ultimately, that is the point of sports. You do not get into Vikings fandom because you're sitting there making a big bet that they're going to win you Super Bowls. You didn't make that decision. You didn't sit down and go, which team's going to win me a lot of Super Bowls? I'll be a Vikings fan. That didn't happen. It's not what anybody does. You fell in love Whether you grew up falling in love or you got into football right around the time that Brett Favre and the Vikings were doing their 2009 thing, you fell in love then, or maybe earlier, maybe, just a couple years ago. You fell in love. It was not a rational thing. And when the Vikings lose in the playoffs and their season ends and your gut gets punched, doesn't mean you were an idiot for getting into it. I really want to push back on that. Your instinct might be, well, gosh, next time I won't get my hopes up, then I won't feel as bad. And I got 2 things for you. 1, yes, you will. Okay, I've tried it. We've all tried it. Doesn't work. Doesn't help. 2, then I think you're taking the point out of it. You know what I mean? The point of all of this is to get your hopes up and to have fun. I spent a month idly daydreaming about what if Sam Darnold won the Vikings a Super Bowl. Wouldn't it kind of feel right? That it was going to be like a journeyman that like wasn't supposed to be good, and he would be the guy. Like comparing to all of Vikings history, like it had to be that. It would be so perfect. And I got to daydream about that for a month. And you know what? That was awesome. I'm glad I did it. And the sting of it falling away is going to fade. But it was worth it. That's just where I'm at. Maybe you're more jaded than me and you don't enjoy football anymore, in which case maybe it's time for a new hobby. I think you should look in the mirror and really ask yourself that. But all that is to say, that was the first thing I wanted to start with. The regular season, it doesn't get you anywhere to win 14 games if you still got to go on the road and play on Wild Card Weekend. And the Vikings had very much a direct chance to not do that, and they blew it. And then they very much had a direct chance to get into the divisional, go play in Philly. They did not do it. Team failed. They didn't fail quite as spectacularly as they did last year, but they also don't have the same excuses as they did last year. And now, at 3 years into the Kevin O'Connell tenure, he is garnering a reputation as a regular season maven that can't win in the playoffs. There's only one way to fix that, and he'll have to wait till next year to get another chance to. But when I say all the things came home to roost, how often this whole year have I sat here in front of this mic, in front of this little webcam, and said, boy, everything the Vikings do takes too long. Their passing plays take too long. Sam Darnold holds the ball too long. Their blitzes take too long. Their stunts take too long. Their coverages take too long to set up. Everything is too slow. And the Rams do everything fast. That, when we did the crossover with Doug McCain earlier last week, we kind of started talking about this in a different context of like conservative versus aggressive and how it's like these two kind of opposites meeting. And I think it turned into, by the Rams' design, and the Vikings were helpless to stop it, it turned into slow versus fast. Tortoise versus the hare. And the hare won. Stafford got the ball out in 2.5 seconds every time. And if your pass rush takes more than 2.5 seconds to even engage with the blocker, let alone beat the blocker, but just to get to him, you're not going to get there. And it's not like the Rams were throwing short passes all day long. They were throwing 25-yard passes right at the top of their drop. That is NFL-level Sunday execution. The Vikings offense took 4 to 5 seconds. You had former quarterbacks logging onto Twitter and saying, you have 2.5 seconds. It was Tommy Kramer tweeted that during the game. You have 2.5 seconds. And that is the rule of thumb. It's been the rule of thumb for decades. It's the rule of thumb when you talk about like analytics. It's the rule of thumb for how next-gen stats decides whether or not to log a pressure on the offensive lineman or on the quarterback has 2.5 seconds elapsed. That's the rule of thumb. So when 2 of the 9 sacks, the 9 sacks that Sam Darnold took happened after 2.5 seconds, that's a structural issue. That's either your quarterback just is holding the ball too long and has to stop doing that. And the fact that you were incapable of getting him away from that is a coaching failure, not to undo the quarterbacking failure that it is, but at a certain point, coach, you got to fix it. It's either that, or he has to hold the ball too long because your scheme takes too long. Time has to be the focus of the offseason. Time. And guess what? Drawing it up shorter, going to different pages of your playbook is free. In any McVay Shanahan style playbook, it is divided typically. It's divided by like day of install, but within that day of install, It will be the passing plays will be categorized by drop depth. Your 3-step drops, your 3 steps with a hitch, your 5-step drop, your 5 steps with a hitch, your 7 steps. 5 different categories. And all of those different plays have different timings that are meant to align with the length of that drop back. So if O'Connell wanted to call more stuff quicker all year long, he had it. It's in there. But what I think happened is mistakes made in August, or I'll say decisions made in August, proved costly in January. Those decisions are, we're going to spend more of our training camp time on the longer developing plays because we want a high average depth of target. We want to push the ball deep. We want to take big shots, and we want to get chunks and explosives. And I bet there's an analytics backbone to that really proves, the deeper passes do better. That's a pretty well-known statistical thing, right? You want to be aggressive. You want to go down, push the ball down the field, of course. And I think they spent so much time on that all year long that their 3-step playbook was too thin and they didn't have stuff that they liked from there. Or maybe it's just that Sam Darnold can't do that. He can't just get the ball out quick with regularity. He'll hold it too long. He'll turn down easy reads. He can't make those fast timing reads. And if that's the case, then so long and thanks for all the fish. There it is. That might be where we're at with Darnold, who had a terrible game. I wanted to start with the play calling thing. And I think the same idea made its ugly face known on the defensive side with Flores and the blitzes. And I'm starting to grow issues with the Flores defense as good. I mean, it was a very good defense all year long. Statistically, it was one of the best defenses in the league. It didn't feel like it because it kind of does give up explosives, but then get major plays in the end. But then if you have a game where you don't get a big turnover, where you don't get the big sack, the Vikings go without a takeaway for the first time all year, then, it doesn't look that good. And yeah, they kind of, they gave up most of their scoring, or they gave up 24 in the first half and then only 3 in the second half, but the game was over. So the Rams cut the engines and called very conservative plays. And of course they didn't score. Too little, too late,
For big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better on FanDuel because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. Jaden Daniels may have led the Commanders to their first playoff win in a long time, but now they face the number 1 seed Lions. FanDuel has the biggest point spread of the divisional round with the Lions giving 8.5. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Mike McCarthy is out as the Dallas Cowboys head coach.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast.
Landon, we got some Cowboys news. They are moving on from Mike McCarthy as the head coach. Your thoughts?
So many thoughts, I guess the first thing we should start with is kind of my initial thoughts, which was surprise. I think we had
shocked.
just to get to just an hour before previously, we had gotten some news that the Cowboys had kind of not started negotiating yet, which still kind of was phrasing it as though this was to come, that negotiation was to come and that this whole situation was still ahead of itself. And before we knew it, suddenly it's over. The negotiation is done, and that there is no more negotiation that's going to happen, and that Mike McCarthy is not going to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys in 2025. So I think I'm still kind of dealing with the speed in which it went from, man, they haven't even started, to negotiating to, oh, it's over. I think that's the initial thing that, that's part of just living on social media. And then I have to say, look, maybe it's the optimist in me, but I have to say that I feel like I felt the first bit of positive feeling I felt about this front office in a little while, because they were willing to put their foot down about this situation. I think, a lot of people we can sit here and debate whether or not Mike McCarthy should have come back and the merits of that, and whether he should have gotten a 5-year deal or a 3-year deal, which, I'm sure those are all parts of why the deal didn't go through, and what McCarthy wanted versus what the front office wanted. But I think at the end of the day, the thing that is most heartening to me about this situation is that the front office looked at the situation, was not willing to give Mike McCarthy carte blanche after what they had experienced, had a specific number or a specific scenario in mind for which they wanted Mike McCarthy to return. And when those parameters weren't met, and it didn't look like that specific scenario was going to be played out, they weren't going to cave on the situation. They were willing to put their foot down and move on. And I'll even go so far as I wouldn't be surprised if they had made this decision a while ago and were kind of just doing a lot of this maybe for show, for the locker room, for the fans. But I just think the fact that they were willing to move on from Mike McCarthy, I think that's a positive, that they're willing to do something to make changes that they need.
I've had mixed feelings this whole time about what the Cowboys should do with Mike McCarthy, because I do think he's a good coach. And I've been saying this since they hired him. I think he's always been a little bit of an underrated head coach. I thought he did a pretty good job with the Cowboys over the last 5 years. But I will also acknowledge it does feel like he's not the coach to get them to the next level, right? So that should make it an easy decision to move on. I'm also a little afraid that they just don't know necessarily how to hire coaches, and that you might get a coach that's worse. But I think the unknown of, hey, you might get somebody that's actually better, you might stumble into the right coach, was at least appealing enough for me to move on. Now, here's the thing that I think is really interesting, Landon, is we're saying that the Cowboys moved on. I'm not so sure it was the Cowboys that moved on. I was listening to a report from Jane Slater today, and she said that McCarthy just got kind of tired of the contract negotiations and not really knowing where the Cowboys stood. So he just told them, I'm gone. Right. And he went to his assistants and the other coaches on the staff and said, hey, I'm not coming back. You're free to go look for other jobs. And I think there was, with all these teams hiring their coaches, all the assistants were also in limbo. I wonder how much of it, if it's McCarthy kind of putting his foot down and saying, hey, I'm just done with this. I want to move on as well. Let's get this over with.
And look, there's no reason this couldn't be a mutual parting of ways, right? Like, I think, we've had this idea that both sides have wanted this to continue. But I think that the reality of it is that both sides probably wanted it to continue under their own terms, right? With Mike McCarthy, having an upgraded salary with maybe a lengthier contract. And then maybe the Cowboys viewed a shorter term situation where they actually were giving play calling duties to somebody else, or
but my question is though, Landon, if you've even come to the conclusion that you want McCarthy back, let's say on a 2-year deal, let's just say like a small term deal, how could you not figure out a way to get that done? Like, if you've come to the decision that you want McCarthy back in some form or fashion, how do you not get it done?
Because I think that ultimately at the end of the day, I think one thing that we can maybe agree on, and maybe not, but I don't know that the Cowboys were all that convicted in re-signing Mike McCarthy. If they were convicted in re-signing Mike McCarthy probably would have been re-signed. If you wanted Mike McCarthy back, you don't have a problem signing him to a 5-year deal. I think that they wanted Mike McCarthy back under a very specific set of terms, and when that didn't play out, I think they were willing at that point to go, okay, no, you know what? Now it's time to just move on. I think from their point of view, it's like, hey, Mike, we're willing to give you another shot at this. And from Mike's point of view, it's, hey, I should be rewarded for this great job I've done. I should get a pay raise and all that. Those are two very different stances on contract negotiations. I can understand how they weren't able to bridge that gap. And certainly it's not, I think when they go into these situations, they don't always have just one scenario in mind. I think that they'd have to have a contingency. Maybe they looked more and more, they were eyeballing that contingency plan more and more as the negotiations were going on and going, you know what, like, why are we banging our head on this wall that we feel like we haven't been able to break through anyways? Maybe it's time to start fresh.
My other question is why now then? If you decided that you wanted to start fresh, which again, I'm totally in favor of, why not do it as soon as the season is over so that you can get a start on the coaching search? And again, I'm not saying that the Cowboys missed out on Mike Vrabel because I didn't really want Vrabel to be the coach anyways, but you missed out on the opportunity to interview him. You missed out on the opportunity to interview Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn because now you can't interview those guys until I believe after the conference championship games, if assuming they make it to the Super Bowl. Why wait?
I don't have a good answer for that, honestly. I mean, and certainly not going to defend every aspect of what the Joneses are doing. That's for sure. But I will say that they haven't really missed anything, like you said. Like I understand the why wait at like questioning, but at the same time, like the opportunity to interview Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, like unless those two get hired, and let's be clear, Ben Johnson's not really an option for this team unless the Cowboys are really changing their stance. And frankly, unless Ben Johnson is really changing his stance on the kind of team he wants to go to.
But shouldn't that be telling if you can't even get an interview with Ben Johnson?
No, because I don't listen. I love the idea of Ben Johnson, the play caller, but the idea of giving Ben Johnson the kind of control that he wants over an organization when he's never done anything remotely close to this before, like, be reasonable. Like, that's scary. Like, I understand that. I understand.
I'm okay though with scary though at this point, right? Like,
that's fine. That's okay. But I think it's also reasonable to understand, like, to be wary about giving any one of these kind of hot at the moment play callers full control of your franchise when, I mean, let's be honest, the vast majority of those situations fail. I'm not suggesting Ben Johnson's going to be like that, but like, I guess my point is that there's this idea out there that like Ben Johnson can't fail. And Ben Johnson is asking for a lot for a first-time head coach. So I can understand why some organizations are not just willing to, especially organizations that haven't done that since Bill Parcells, who had, let's face it, a much better track record than Ben Johnson did when they did it. I don't think that the Cowboys are just willing to just hand that over again. And whether that's good or not, I think that is debatable. I think that that's just something that they're not willing to do. So, yes, they may have cut themselves off for maybe one or two of these candidates, but honestly, I don't know that they have, because if there is a coach that was, I mean, again, for better or for worse, if there's a coach out there who wants to be the head coach of the Cowboys, I have a feeling that they'll wait till get the interview when it's time for the Cowboys when they come calling for it.